where is the process as far as the appeals? Because obviously there was a hearing the other day, but could this appeals process be playing out all the way past when he's released?
Absolutely. I mean, the court has zero interest in Steven Donziger as a human being. They have a tremendous amount of interest in dissecting appointments clause jurisprudence. So they will take as long as they wish to take to resolve this very, very wonky, thorny, abstract type of question. And whether Steven finishes his whole sentence or not is not even in the top 100 of the court's concerns.
Right. On a more, I guess, optimistic note, there has been a campaign launch. There has been a campaign launched by the law students for climate accountability against, in particular, Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher. It's a very, very high-powered law firm, represents a lot of corporations like Chevron, and Gibson, Dunn has been the go-to law firm for Chevron in this corporate political crusade, I call it, persecution against Donziger. So these law students are basically boycotting Gibson Dunn and trying to galvanize other law students not to do business or not to work for Gibson Dunn because of not only their persecution of Steven Donziger, but they rank number 2 among corporate law firms in terms of litigation, anti-climate litigation. So what's your response to this kind of youth campaign now among law students?
I think it's fantastic. And we've seen this happen somewhat effectively once before. And that's with the Jones Day firm, which was very, very involved in defending and advocating for some of the more reprehensible members of the last most reprehensible administration. And it was effective in getting them to back down. This campaign, I think, highlights the horrific nature of the Gibson-Dunn-Crutcher practice. I don't think it's going to have any practical effect. Gibson-Dunn-Crutcher is not going to back down. Chevron and the fossil fuel industry pay them hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars a year. And I don't think it's going to affect recruiting substantially of young legal talent, because the truth is you offer somebody $200,000 a year as a starting salary after 3 years of postgraduate education. A lot of people's principles under those circumstances become somewhat flexible, shall we say. But it's fantastic in shining a light on the people who don't like to have light shined on them. They love their write-ups in the law journals. They love their narrow niche world of corporate masters of the universe, but they don't like regular people paying much attention to what they're doing.
Right. And by the way, Gibson Dunn is rampant in politics. They represent a lot of political campaigns. I know Hillary Clinton, her most recent campaign used them. So they are a major political player too, in terms of who they represent. You know, I wanted just finally, because you could get bogged down in the law, which is your area. But
I do. I get bogged. I'm hopelessly bogged. I can barely lift my legs.
But I think, you know, something that really is striking about this is what Chevron has so far successfully done is completely, I mean, other than activists and people who support Steven who have kept the focus on this, but at least in the courts and mostly in the media, they have essentially disappeared as a topic that they poison the Ecuador. That they poison the Amazon in Ecuador with high cancer rates, birth defects, you know, people there still to this day living in air pollution, things like that.
By the way, nobody denies that Texaco, which had then been later purchased by Chevron, did all of these things. The only question is who's responsible for it. Chevron's position is, we're not responsible. Texaco made some sort of an agreement with a corporatist government to absolve us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have bought them. But nobody denies the essential facts of the cancers, the deaths, the poisoning, the toxicity, the destruction of water and farmland.
Right. But my point is what they've successfully done with an army of lawyers, they've spent God knows how much money going after Steven Donziger, is reverse the spotlight and topic onto bogus claims of fraud against Steven Donziger, making him the criminal. And if you even listen to Judge Preska and her diatribe against Donziger from September when she sentenced him, she said this is not about what Chevron has done. This has nothing to do. And to me, that's very dangerous because sure, it's a legal case, but essentially Chevron is creating a playbook for other corporations if they are successfully convicted and have to pay the piper, to basically just hire an army of lawyers, gaslight and reverse the whole thing on the environmental lawyer or the environmental activists, and take out of the actual news what they did.
Well, the bad news is Gibson Dunn Crutcher already wrote that playbook before the Donziger case. They did it with chemicals that cause sterility of Nicaraguan farm workers. They've done it around the globe. Once, and the Chevron playbook the Gibson Dunn Crutcher playbook is very simple. Their clients lose the case. That's when the actual litigation begins. And Gibson Dunn goes out and finds fraud, purchases fraud, makes huge payments in order to get testimony about fraud. And then that both changes the narrative and, of course, totally changes the legal complexion of the case. Right. But for all of their cleverness, they made a huge mistake in this case. Donziger had lost the case by 2017. Lost it. The award was overturned. It was unenforceable in the United States. Court of Appeals affirmed. Supreme Court said we're not. And had Chevron simply walked away, taken the win at that point, the case would be over and Donziger would be a footnote. But instead of doing that, they turned all of their resources against Donziger personally, demonizing him, attacking him, threatening him. And people started to take notice. And what began as basically one lawyer facing disbarment at his kitchen table in 2017 has now turned into a global movement, a movement that's gotten the attention of members of Congress, 2 United States senators, the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, Amnesty International, and the like. So as clever as they are, and as well-funded as their legal team is, they still managed, in the course of trying to destroy a human, to create a movement against them.
Right. Absolutely. So to wrap up, obviously he's been in prison for over a month. What are the expectations here? It seems at this point, this will be bogged down, the appeal, and he will end up having to serve his full prison sentence.
Well, I stay away from expectations because they're a chronic source of disappointment, and I can't live my whole life disappointed. I do have hopes. Mm-hmm. And my hope is that at some point, sooner rather than later, some responsible adult will step in and say, this is more than enough. This never should have happened in the first place, and try to restore Steven to where he was before.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ron, for taking the time to update my audience, all the work you've done, and we'll keep in touch.
Thanks so much. Great to be here. At my age, it's great to be anywhere.
Thanks.